and I am not from among the polytheists. Surely my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death are all for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. No associate has seen, and this is my commandment, and I am of those who submit. O Allah, thou art the King. There is no God but thee. Thou art my Lord, and I am thy servant. I have been greatly unjust to myself, and I confess my faults. Grant me protection against all my faults. None can grant protection against faults with thee. And O Allah, guide me into the best of morals, but none can guide me to the best of morals but thee. And turn away from me the evil and indecent morals, for none can turn away from me the evil and indecent morals but thee. And O Allah, bless Muhammad, and bless the true followers of Muhammad, as thou didst bless Abraham and the true followers of Abraham, for surely thou art praised and magnified in our midst. And O Allah, make Muhammad successful, and make the true followers of Muhammad successful, as thou didst make Abraham and the true followers of Abraham successful, for surely thou art praised and magnified. Ameen.
I'm sorry, it's muted. I mean, again, welcome to Project Separation, Building Our Promised Land. When I say I'm over the top with excitement about tonight's program, I am over the top excited because we're going to be dealing with this subject that is very near and dear to my heart also, which is education and the proper environment to build a nation. What type of environment do we have to place the children in? So I don't want to spend all this time talking because we want to make sure that we give our guest the fullness of our time. And we are so honored to have also presenting this evening the student national spokesperson of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, student minister Ava Muhammad. And before we go any further, just in case you didn't know, and if you didn't know, I don't know, maybe you've been under a rock or something like that, but we came to this point today because in 2018, she picked up the banner of the call for separation as issued not just by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but really upon the coming of God himself in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. And from 2018 to 2020, she crisscrossed the country, delivering a series of town hall meetings, should Blacks consider separation, which then became Blacks must consider separation. And now at this stage in the game, we're at building our promised land because we're doing this in real time. And so we're so grateful that she is presenting for us this evening. So before we go any further, we'd like to let you know, because I'm doing all this talking and I got to tell you who's going to be on the program tonight. That's how excited I am. I feel like I'm rambling, but I promise you, I'm just so excited. So we have with us this evening, Sister Wakiti Muhammad. She is co-founder and director of Elevated Places School. I mean, this is a phenomenal institution. And she co-founded it along with Sister Melva Muhammad. And they are actually an accredited pre-K to 12th grade school. And this is what she says about the school is that they focus on high academic and moral standards. That's what sets it apart right away, moral standards, while working in conjunction with Muhammad universities of Islam all over the nation to fulfill the vision of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. In addition to high academic skills, the school provides experiences that enable the students to grow socially, emotionally, and get this, because we don't have this anymore, artistically. We know that's been cut. So also joining us, we have our sister Aya Muhammad, who's currently a senior at Elevated Places. Now, but here's the thing, though she's a senior at Elevated Places, think about this, because you got to wrap your mind around this. She is actually graduated with her associate's degree before she graduates this month from Elevated Places as a senior in high school. So when she goes to enter college, she's going to be entering as a junior at 16 years old.
Come on now.
16. She's already received over $500,000 in academic scholarships. And guess what? She has never attended any other school. That means she's only been in the right environment her whole academic career. And we have another brother on the line who also has never attended another school. He's only been in one academic environment this whole time. It's Elevated Places, and his brother Hashim, and he's a junior. And when he goes to talk to us tonight, because he participated in working with the Navy Bean experimentation and product formulation. So we're so excited to hear about that, as well as I believe he may have been part of the model city planning. I'm not sure, but he'll let us know about that further. So, I mean, just hearing that alone makes us so excited. So we have two little brief videos to show, just kind of giving you an idea of what Elevated Places School looks like. And then we're going to have some words from Student Minister Ava Muhammad that's just going to set the tone and foundation and just kind of put the whole place on fire as we move into this program this evening. So we're going to watch our first video of Elevated Places School. Okay, give me one moment and I will share my screen with you. That was the first video, and we have this other very brief video. Pardon me, just one moment. The person who normally does the videos, we do not have this evening, so just bear with me just briefly. Work at this little quick technical situation.
What makes Elevated Places so unique is the fact that we have such a diverse curriculum. I completely believe in this. I believe what it is that we have been given. I know that it works, and because I see it in my own children, and I know that if they were not in this environment, they would not be the people that they are today. We have students and parents from all different religious denominations and backgrounds who are simply looking for an alternative to public schools.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope that you all are as excited as I am now after seeing that and very pumped. So at
sound is out.
We can hear you.
Sound.
You can't hear me? Can anybody else hear me?
Do you have any sound?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
You can hear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh.
Let's see. We seem to be having an issue on your end, Minister Ava. They can hear me.
I got it. I got it.
Okay, you got it now? All right, so at this time, to bring us the charge, to set the stage for tonight's presentation, again, we have the student national spokesperson of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Sister Minister Ava Muhammad.
Thank you, Sister Donna. In the most holy name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, who came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, to whom all praise is forever due. We thank him for raising from among us his exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and we thank them both eternally for their mercy, their messenger Messiah among us, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I greet all of my beloved, beautiful, original brothers and sisters in the words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Sister Donna, for moderating this critical program. And I really am so happy to have the opportunity to thank Sister Wakiti and Sister Melva for what they have done under the guidance of Allah, his Christ, and their Messiah in accomplishing one of the most critical components for us to have any hope of a new nation, any hope of a hereafter, any hope of the kingdom of heaven coming in, and that is taking charge of the education of our children, our future. And as I feast my eyes on Sister Aya and Brother Hashim and look forward quickly, I'm going to be very brief because we're here to listen to our teachers and our students. I just want to share something from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan from study guide number 2 in the course Self-Improvement, the Basis for Community Development. And that unit is entitled Building Human Potential. This world has a completely erroneous concept of what it is to develop the human being. It is about man, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, man, meaning male and female, is an underdeveloped God. And our potential is to become God. And so it is critical that men and women of faith, men and women who know Allah God, not only in spirit, but in truth, know that he is a man, know that he lives, know that he is in power, and know to let our children always be made aware they are the original people. And I will just say this from the minister. There are 2 lost arts among us, reading and writing. And he said that if there is one among us that cannot read, that is one too many. And so I'll stop with that, Sister Donna, and yield the microphone and the floor to our illustrious guests. I am so proud of all of you. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, alaikum salam. Thank you for the charge. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it. So we'll start with having our students just say a little bit about themselves and Sister Wakiti, and then we're going to dig into the heart of what we want to talk about this evening. So we'll go ahead and start with Sister Aya. You can speak with us about your experience at Elevated Places. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, sister.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aya Hadia. I am 16 years old. I am a senior at the Elevated Places. Sister Wakiti is my mother, and I have been attending the Elevated Places since I was 2 years old. As you mentioned, I am a dual credit student. I recently got my associate's degree in multidisciplinary studies, and in the fall of 2022, I will be attending the University of St. Thomas with a criminology major on a pre-law track. And honestly, the Elevated Places has been such a blessing. Going to a school such as that has allowed me to just be comfortable with who I am as a Black young Muslim woman. And when you can go to participate in activities outside of elevated places and do programs outside of elevated places, you're really understanding how blessed you are, because you just walk with a different level of confidence. They teach us that we are God's, and every morning we recite, I am what God says I am, and that sticks with us. And we are able to attend other programs knowing that no one can make us feel inadequate, because God is within us, and the only limits that we have is the ones we put on ourselves. So that's just allowed me to even achieve this associate's degree, because I attended college with adults that were, they had their own families. They were way older than me. There were other teenagers, and that didn't stop me from wanting to be, not only do my best, but want to be my highest self and carry myself as such. And by me being authentic and say that I am a Muslim girl, and that I wear this and I dress this certain way, and I speak like this, and I am articulate, and I am comfortable with being who I am, it unconsciously gives other people the permission to do the same.
Oh my God. First of all, when she said that they start with the knowledge of God and who they are, that is the most important knowledge the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, the knowledge of God and the knowledge of self. We know that this educational system is separating, taking God completely out the system. This is what it looks like when you put God back into the school system. Woo! All right. So now we are ready for Brother Hashim. Brother Hashim, please speak to us.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
My name is Brother Hashim Muhammad. I've attended the elevated places for about 10 to 11 years. I'm currently 15 years old, a junior, doing dual credit at the elevated places. And like Sister Aya said, the elevated places has been such a blessing in my life. I have been able to experience so many things that I think I wouldn't have experienced at any other school. First, starting off with knowledge of self, with Allah. And so I'm immensely grateful to the teachers for sacrificing so, because they could be doing so many other things. And they have been here for years teaching these students to be knowledgeable about themselves and what, and about their abilities, their creativity, their art, right? And they expound on that along with knowledge of self. So I can't be more than grateful to teachers, and especially Sister Wakiti. I mean, I'm immensely grateful. I'm so blessed. I'm thankful. There's so much to say. There's a lot to say, but I think that wraps it up. Right?
That's just, it's so incredible to see this young, beautiful Black man who's being taught from the beginning that he is a God, and he's out there in the world representing it. So he knows what he is. That is so critical. So again, and then we're going to bring on Sister Wakiti, because again, our topic is the proper education to build a nation, not a city, not a town, not a neighborhood, to build a nation. That encompasses many, many, many things, not just buildings. And it starts with the people. So with that, we now want to bring forward Sister Wakiti Muhammad to give us a little bit about herself.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Yes, ma'am. My name is Sister Wakiti Muhammad. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. And in 2005, as we all know, the world was hit, but especially New Orleans, we were hit with Hurricane Katrina. And I actually was in the hospital. And I had a 3-day-old baby when we evacuated. That 3-day-old baby is Aya, along with my other children and my husband. And so when I came to Houston, I had no one. I had never been out of the city of New Orleans, even though I was a public school teacher there. The culture is very different in New Orleans. Once you live there, you typically don't leave. So I had no other family. It was my husband and myself and our children, including the 3-day-old baby. And when I got here, I met Sister Melva, and she opened up her family to us. She said that I'm already homeschooling. If you don't know what to do with your children, I'd gladly take them. I won't charge you anything. And of course, I was so clueless. And again, using the word grateful, extremely grateful, because education obviously was very important to me as a certified teacher in the city of New Orleans. I lost multiple students in the storm. And of course, we lost everything except for the things, I just so happened to bring my Holy Quran. So I still had that, and an overnight bag of clothing. So when I got here, and of course, I was in disarray, the biggest thing was, what am I going to do with my children, as any other mother would do? And as I said, Sister Melba graciously welcomed us, and I dropped my children off to her and I started to rebuild my life. And a year later, when she found out that I was actually a teacher, she was like, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm just trying to survive at this point. And she said, well, let's work together and strive to do something with the children. Maybe you can take them a couple of days and I can take them a couple of days. And we did that for some time. And in 2007, we decided to open the Elevated Places. And the premise was that we needed to have an environment on our side of the city, because there was an MUI, but Houston is huge and it was very, very far. And it did not at that time accommodate the children that I had as far as the age. And so she also had older children like I did. And we came together, we started the Elevated Places. And the goal was to make sure that our children had an environment that was reflected of exactly what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's vision was, and that they would be inspired. And so 16 years later, here we are. Praise be to Allah. We've done some amazing things at the Elevated Places by the grace of Allah. And I'm just excited to share with you all today.
Thank you so very much. And that's, really because of the time, she just gave us a little snippet, a little snapshot of what's happening. And so we want to get into really the reason why we are featuring these students this evening, and Sister Wakiti, beyond Elevated Places as a school, but the education, again, education to build a nation. And what interests us, that made us want to feature them on Project Separation, was two of the many countless things that they have done. I won't even go all the way back to the first time that they entered the National Black Society of Engineers competition and just swept it, like right off the bat, the competitions, the robotics, just everything, just swept it the first, because this is what they produce. But in particular, recently, there were two things that occurred. One was the experimentation on the navy bean and the formulation of products. Because when we're talking about nation building, then we have to have a mind to produce and do things for ourselves. And this is a scientific mindset, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us it takes science. We need science and mathematicians to build nations. That is one of them. And then their experience really in planning a model city, because Project Separation, building our promised land. If you've watched us the last couple of episodes, and if you haven't, you can go back to projectseparation.com and our YouTube channel and see where we dealt with urban planning, building cities, building safe and decent communities for ourselves as we expand into statehood. So we're going to take some time this evening to talk about those things, to discuss the student involvement, to discuss how it came about, why, and some of the next steps. And really what others can gain from that, and maybe bring it into their environment as well. And then throughout the course of the evening, we'll hear from Dr. Ava as she puts her input in there. So if you could talk to us, one, about the Navy Bean experiment, how it came about, and then we'd like to hear from the students.
Well, let me start here by giving some context. All of my research, all of my, academic research in grad schools during a doctoral level has been on project-based learning. Project-based learning is a method in which you have students to create authentic learning experiences through real life problems. And it's usually hands-on. So I'll give you a small example as we go on to talking about the model city. when instead of saying that, you know, we can see what's going on in the world, we understand the fall of America, it's important for us to plan for what's going to happen in the next decade, in the next 20 years. Instead of saying that, then we create the problem. You know, this is the actual problem. How do you believe that we can solve this particular problem? And students are typically brought into small groups, and there are 4 major milestones that all of the people in academia are saying that this is the way of the future as far as education is concerned. And those 4 C's are communication, learning how to speak and articulate your vision, collaboration, learning how to work with other people and ideas share, which is exactly what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us in collective economics. Also critical thinking, learning how to cognitively have an idea and develop it and plan it strategically. And then of course, creativity, learning how to think outside of the box. And so within our biology lessons and units, we were working on the immune system. And as we were working on the immune system, what is the thing that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, of course, that we needed? And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan continues to express the importance of is the Navy bean. You can't talk about the immune system without talking about the importance of a Navy bean. And so we brought on multiple people who are great scientists in their field. Brother Tariq, cardiac was one, Sister Sharifa, and countless others who specialize in the science of the Navy bean. And as we did that, of course, with also studying the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's words and how to eat to live, in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's different words and lectures on the power of the Navy bean. That was the problem. How do we use this to help get us through the time in which we're living in? How do we use it to combat the shrinking of the resources, since we all know that we're heading towards recession? What do we do? If we're in pandemic and we're locked down and we don't have access to certain things, what do we do? And so the Navy bean experiment was what the students thought would be some real solutions. It wasn't just them coming up with something. They took months of research and months of collaborative group work, along with real cooking classes. We had a chef to come in and teach them how to prepare Navy beans on Zoom and nighttime, where the parents and the students can take part in. We did multiple things dealing with the Navy bean, and ultimately they were able to come up with very innovative products, such as Navy bean deodorant. It did not smell. Toothpaste. They did a lot of face masks, a lot of different types of products. It was maybe about 7 products that they were able to create using different parts of the Navy bean, and using different mentors outside of the school, because that's what we're always about, trying to find your information wherever you can find it and not limiting your resources, but using all of the resources, capital and human, that you have access to get some information. And so they will work and they will collaborate. And then of course, a big part of it is always presentation.
Thank you so much. I love that you, I'm sorry, go ahead to say.
No, I was just in agreement. You know, I love the mantra of the elevated places, where I am what God says I am. And that this same study guide, Building Human Potential, the minister speaks about the prophet Abraham, who is named in all of the 3 major religions, and gave his life, or was willing to lay down his life in defense of the belief in one God. And in order for us, Minister Farrakhan says, to be given dominion once again over this planet, we must be restored to our right mind so that we can accept the reality of the one God. And I love hearing from the students and hearing from Sister Wakiti, the project-based approach, where we move away from the current educational system of this country, which really is new. It was, I think, developed in the early 20th century and really designed to produce factory workers. And you're not taught to think, you're taught to comply with a series of sounds and instructions. And so the bell rings at a certain time and you go from one class to the next, and you follow a very narrow sphere, a small sphere within which you may or may not ever see what you were born to do. Because many of us are born to do something that has yet to be seen. And so if we don't allow our babies and our young people that freedom to show us what they think, and we can step back and just simply guide them and help them with what they already have been gifted with from the Lord of the worlds. And I was telling someone, I don't know that prior to the Caucasian coming on the planet, that we had an educational system as such, because the way of life of Islam is, as the Holy Quran said, it is the duty of the Muslim to acquire knowledge. And, you know, listening to Sister Aya speak about her pride and comfort in being a Muslim woman, a Muslim female, Muslim girl, not only not seeking to conform to this world that's going out, but stating very boldly and yet in a feminine way, this is the way to be and the way to go. And it is our young people who will make this happen. You know, to be an effective educator, you have to be a prophet, because you have to be a seer. You have to see, and Sister Wakiti just proved it, you know, you have to be able to see 10, 15, 25 years down the road, because you're teaching a young life for something that hasn't arrived yet. And so if you're boxed into the present, and God forbid into the past, then you're actually destroying that potential. And, you know, my only sadness tonight is, you know, I'm trying to figure out, how do I get my 5- and 6-year-old grandchildren down to Houston? Because, you know, looking at the video clips, I am exhilarated. I'm exhilarated. That's it. That's all I had to say.
That's all. That's powerful. That's not a that's all. So if I'm not mistaken, Brother Hashim, you participated in the Navy Bean experiment?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Can you talk to us about your experience, what you experienced?
In general, yes, ma'am. So it started from, of course, Brother Tariq Carter. The idea that he expressed on us about the Navy Bean being, he didn't want the Navy bean to be looked at just as a food source. He wanted to look at it more than that, having it have like more diverse uses. So I was inspired by that. I was like, okay, so I have we have a team of 4, including me, and we decide that we want to make something unique, something no one's really thought of, because we knew people were going to create things like, you know, lipstick, kind of basic things, but I wanted to go beyond that. I wanted to challenge myself. And so the idea came of oil. Excuse me. The idea came of natural oil, kind of like lotion, shea butter, coconut oil. And I thought, okay, so let's try to formulate a plan for this. I knew that the oil was going to be the most essential part of this entire project, and it was also the pain, the amount of pain that our team went through. It was, whew, ooh, let's get into it. Let's just get right into it, okay? So we planned it out towards how we were going to formulate this project, and we decided, okay, so each team member is going to have a certain amount of experiments, and we'll narrow it down to 3 experiments. And so those 3 experiments narrow it down to the juicer method, the steam distillation method, and the blender method. The juicer and the blender are essentially the same method, but you're using a juicer and a blender. So essentially, you measure out about a cup of beans, you pour them into a bowl, you let them soak for about 6 hours, and you drain the beans in a strainer. You either juice them or you drain them. You warm the water, make sure it's warm or hot. You juice the beans, and then you have this like navy bean juice liquid in the fridge for like 8 hours. And then what comes out of it is like this less concentrated version of the navy bean oil. Now, why do I say less concentrated version? Throughout the entire experience of us experimenting, we realized that a majority of like the liquid that we were getting from the bean came from just like the bean mush, because it was hard to get the oil. Like the oil existed there, we knew that much, but we didn't know how to single it out itself. And this is when steam distillation came in. So after doing countless research, I decided, okay, I need to set up this steam distillation, right? And so I take a couple of materials that I have at home, and I construct this, dare I say, masterpiece, dare I say it, right? And so we have this system, and the only downside towards the end is that some of it was made out of plastic, so steam did end up melting parts of it. And I was able to get a result of it. So I'll explain this much. So this is how steam distillation works. We have steam that travels through a filter that has like whatever essential natural material that you have, maybe like some type of tree material, leaf, or lavender. In this case, navy bean skin, because we know that the oil actually exists in the skin and not particularly inside the bean. So on a molecular level, you have the steam kind of take out and just rip out all of that oil. And on a molecular level, it's going through the pipes. And then you have a spiral going down. And outside of the spiral, you have this cold water, which essentially uses condensation to turn that oil and water back into liquid form. And then you have something called hydrosol, which is a mix of the oil and the water. And so you actually let it sit there for a while, so that, because we know that both oil and water repel over time on a molecular structure. So you give it time, it eventually separates. And so you have two pipes on both ends, one for the water that's beneath and the oil for the top. And so when I got this result, I ended up fumbling towards the end, and I ended up messing up parts of the results because it was at home. It didn't result in the best. It didn't result in the best condition for how it should have went, but I was able to get a few samples of it. Unfortunately, they got contaminated, and I wasn't able to redo the experiment during that time, so we had a time limit, mainly because parts of the system were already breaking. But I'll go ahead and talk about some of the results that I realized and I discovered. So when I got it, you can already tell that it's a mix of water and oil, but it had like an oily type of feel to it. It's not like water. If you mix water in the palm of your hands, it eventually saturates into your skin. But the oil to it was like different. It didn't saturate, it was still there. That's a very oily type feel. You smell it also, it stinks. I'm just be upfront with that. It stinks. So this is exactly why the lavender oils, all the essential oils that you have for the smell, you drop like 20 drops of that because it stinks. But it's also nourishing for the skin, very nourishing. And so from this experiment, we have the fundamentals of a good deodorant. And so we did a bunch of research on like natural deodorants that you can make at home. And we came up with a list. One for antibacterial ingredients for bacteria. So that's like tea tree oil, that's like apple cider vinegar, and etc. Then you have absorbent ingredients for sweat, like cornstarch, arrowroot, baking soda, etc. And you have the essential oils for smell. This is like 20 drops. So you have the lavender, the sandalwood, the lemon, the grapefruit, all the good smells, naturally, right? And so we come down to the last experiment. This was the end product of our entire experiment. So it's a mix of, it's like 1/4 of baking soda, 1/4 of arrowroot, and then navy bean liquid and a large bowl. And then you add 1/3 of coconut oil to mix and stir the 20 droplets. Because we, like I said earlier, you have a less concentrated a version of the navy bean oil. So we also wanted to include some other enriching oil to help out with antibacterial effects. And so you place 20 drops of tree oil or any type of essential oil that you may like for smell. Place the mixture in an empty deodorant bottle and preferably a small container. And there you have it. You have a less concentrated version of the navy bean product that we made. I wasn't too sure towards the end whether the navy bean, as like the mush, the bean mush, could saturate into the skin, but I know that the oil can. So I think given time and give it enough time to do enough research and experimenting, I think we would have had a pretty good result. I think that concludes it.
Okay, so I want to say this. Because he started out saying, well, we knew people would create the basic things. In my mind, I was like, basic things. I'm not even thinking on that level. Because when I think of the bean and creativity, my mind is like, okay, Navy bean casserole as opposed to bean soup. So I love how comfortable you are, Hashim, in discussing all of this process and this knowledge, because you do it so casually. You said, well, we all knew oils existed in there. Okay, I didn't know oils existed in the skin of the beans. But now as you're talking, everything makes so much sense with all the healing properties there are of the Navy beans. That is such a logical jump to go to how to supply our needs, especially in a household, Muslim households, we know we have lots of beans. And to have the mindset to know, hey, I have things in my home for survival beyond just eating to fulfill my basic needs. And then he was like, the things that I had together at home. So that speaks into the home environment too, the importance and criticalness of the home environment. Because he said, I had some things at home to create my steam distillation process. You know, I might have some things at home. I wouldn't know it, that those are the things for the steam distillation process, but they're there. So this environment, this is what we're talking about, the necessary environment to build a nation. It starts with that mindset. Yes, ma'am, Sister Wakiti, and then we'll go on to Sister Aya.
Yeah, so that is actually what project-based learning is all about. It's about being autonomous. I don't necessarily have to stand over you and tell you exactly how to think. You become a thinker because you're constantly using those critical thinking skills. You have to constantly push yourself to be more and more creative and innovative, because that's what God does. He experiments on a consistent basis, and the things that don't work, we find a way to make it work. We use what we have in order to produce what it is that we want. So before you go to Sister Aya, that was one part of it. A major part, they've been working on all these different types of projects throughout their duration at the elevated places. When they become a senior, the major project is their own individual capstone. And their own individual capstone project is specific to what it is that they want to do and what they want to contribute in the world. And so that project looks very, very different because they have 10 months to develop it. And that's what Sister Aya can talk about as far as the project, how it looks, and what those skills and how you start manifesting and utilizing those particular skills throughout a 10-month journey.
That's so critical, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, of course, we know he established the 9 ministries for us. And so when we have this proper educational environment, the students will automatically
find their industry.
They find their ministry and they're ready to work out in it and contribute to it. So before we go to Sister Aya to speak on that, I want to just read this from this monumental book, Torchlight for America, by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, because he deals with the purpose for education. And what I'm hearing from your students and what I'm hearing from you ties right into what he said. Just briefly, he said, education is supposed to be the proper cultivation of the gifts and talents of the individual through the acquisition of knowledge. Knowledge satisfies our natural thirst for gaining that which will make us one with our Maker. So true education cultivates the person, mind, body, and spirit by bringing us closer to fulfilling our purpose for being, which is to reflect Allah, God. The second purpose for education after self-cultivation is to teach us how to give proper service to self, family, community, nation, and then to the world. So education in itself is rooted in service. And what I heard from Brother Hashim is rooted in service, what is necessary. So we're on the right track here.
that particular part of the Torchlight of America is written within our philosophy of education. Mm-hmm. So within the philosophy of the Elevated Places, when you look at, you know, what the Elevated Places is all about, you'll find that exact excerpt, because that's exactly what we do. That's what the whole foundation of everything. We start everything with those two things in mind: knowledge of self, and then how to use what I have been blessed with to serve others.
This is really critical. I thank you again for appearing on this program, because this educational system is failing, which means, and that's because the nation is failing. You cannot sustain that. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, Master Muhammad came and gave us a whole new education. It's a whole new system, because this is what we need to build a lasting civilization and a lasting nation. So Sister Aya, if you would like to speak on your capstone project with us.
Yes, I have been doing my senior project since, I believe, September of 2021. And as far as coming up with a topic and the actual theme of what I wanted the project to be was pretty difficult because of the field that I am entering into. As I mentioned earlier, I am a criminology major and I want to become a criminal defense attorney. So I came to this conclusion because back in 2017, one of my close family members was incarcerated. And at that time, I had no clue of who I was or what I wanted to be. I just said things that sounded interesting or were my passions, but I knew it wasn't fully me, my purpose. But I've always used my voice, and people told me all the time that my voice was a vessel for others and allowed them to be, you know, courageous and be comfortable with themselves by me being unapologetically me. So I knew that this story was one I had to really focus on, and that was the effects of incarceration on Black families. And when I came to that conclusion, I was really nervous because I had to tell my own story and be vulnerable, but I knew that it was something that I really had to do and discover, because family is just super important to me. As my mother mentioned, we come from New Orleans, Louisiana, and that's the essence of the city. We're always spending family time. Everybody's at their grandmother's house. So I knew that this was something that was a part of me and something I wanted to share with the world. And we first started with the research. I had been studying criminal law for about 2 years now in my dual credit courses. I've taken Criminal Justice 1301 as well as Criminal Justice 1306, when we go over just the system and practicing of law, the prosecution, the judge, the courts, and all of how the courtroom work group ties together. But what I really wanted to focus on was the family aspect, because we always talked about the victim or the wrongly convicted people and how the incarcerated individual is suffering, which they are. However, it is a collective suffering where when you are a family, you are tied to that person, not only because you share blood, but because of that unconditional love. When they hurt, you're missing a part of you that was so crucial and had such a crucial part of your development, because you've gotten certain personality traits from your family members or learned certain things from them. So in discussing this, I interviewed many different people from the Houston Mosque. I interviewed Sister Kiana, who's a family attorney, Brother Derek, who's a political activist. And I recently had an interview with Dr. Bahia Muhammad, who was a professor at Howard University and a criminology professor. And I was able to just gain just new insight. When I'm studying human beings, you learn so much more outside of yourself about the duality of human nature, how human beings can react over their own instinct and go against their own beliefs. And in these instances, you realize how you can become more of a humanitarian. And that simply means that how can I constantly serve myself, and then the knowledge that I acquire, how can I use that to make other people better or allow them to grow in their understanding and allow them, it's about really decoding the human mind, because once you understand, that's the only way you can show and grow in that unconditional love, because that's not something that you're born with. So when I'm discussing the aspects of family, my documentary is titled Family Time. I'm really discussing how through incarceration, those broken bonds can be mended through conversation. There was a strain in my family where we didn't know how to be comfortable with each other, or, you know, that fear or that embarrassment and that shame that you have. Oh, I can't believe this is my family. But when you realize that humility is the only antidote to shame, and that when God placed this trial on you, what is it teaching you? How can you see this in its totality? So that's how I discovered not only my purpose, that I was meant to be a criminal defense attorney, but how I can inspire others to grow in their story and be comfortable about the things that they go through.
Minister Ava, you were about to say something?
Oh, I just came back on again because
Yes,
I've been listening, but every time some noise comes by. Well, but since you acknowledged me, it's interesting that I'm fascinated because Dr. Bahia Muhammad is my daughter Sherelle's mentor at Howard University. She's completing her internship this summer, and her major is clinical psychology with a minor in criminology. And of course, I was a criminal defense attorney when I was diagnosed with cancer and on chemotherapy, and went out to hear Minister Louis Farrakhan. And my natural innate desire to defend, and I hear it in my beautiful sister Aya, it's something innate. And she's singing, there are dimensions to this. And that's what I love about this whole conversation, is the freedom of our people to be what we are, which is multidimensional. We've been confined to this linear environment of a finite people. And I'm just fascinated, Sister Aya, with what you're saying about the true significance of the loss that the Black community incurs when a single person is incarcerated. You know, I was sharing with someone the same thing about these police murders and the shootings and the homicides. You not only took the life of the victim, you destroyed the lives of those who love them, and you traumatized the whole community. And so, Sister Aya, to hear you, I'm so inspired and so moved, because I know, and hearing Brother Hashim talk about the multifaceted power of the Navy being, then you know our future is secure. We just have to move quicker, more deliberately to support institutions of human potential development, such as the elevated places. I think that's where we're doing ourselves a disservice. We need more Ayas, more Hashims. And Sister Wakiti, I don't know if we can clone you or do something. We have a lot of brilliant people in our community, but you have a very unique perspective when it comes to the education of the original people that really needs to go out among our people, so that we don't fall for the propaganda, the deception. That's one of the most harmful things going on right now, is the censorship of truth that we saw implemented during this pandemic, where the US government and its depopulation agenda is so desperate, but yet so bold, that right in front of the American people, they shut down the US Constitution. They shut down freedom of speech. And so I thank Allah for this program tonight.
You know, what you said, Aya, and then also what you said, Student Minister Ava, ties right into what I wanted to speak to you next about, Sister Wakiti, because Sister Aya, you were talking about your, interviewing Bahia Muhammad, Professor Muhammad, and then Minister Ava, you brought up about how that's also your daughter's mentor. So I'm thinking in terms of, one, the network, the relationships that are so important that we formulate, and then being able to have the environment in which they can take advantage of it, which leads me into what I wanted to ask you about, Sister Wakiti, because I know that you have received input. You mentioned, both you and Brother Hashim mentioned, like Brother Tariq Cardiac Muhammad, his role in guiding you in the beginning in the consulting on the Navy being. But in the past, and I did make brief mention of it, but I would like you to touch on it some, your entrance into the National Black Engineers Society, the competitions, and the input that you got from some of the engineers in your city. So if you could speak into the role, and just as Minister Ava said, the importance of assisting, aiding our educational institutions to where it's not just they're being sent to these schools, but we're being called upon so that we're an active part of them. We are able to service them in what we do in our work. So if you could just kind of address that, the significance of it, the importance of it, and how it helped you. And it also helps to fill in a gap when we may not have that particular person with that expertise on staff, but we need to get it and be able to impart it to the students.
I think that is, again, everything that we strive to do has really come from a few fundamental principles. And that one, based off of collaborative unity that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about, that's always been how we've done things, to use our resources. When we started the Elevated Places, we were in Sister Melva's 2-story home, and her family was living there. So in the morning, right before school, they would take all of the beds and move them out, and then come out and put some plastic tables and chairs. And we couldn't afford to have a building. We couldn't afford to have, to pay our staff, exorbitant amounts of money. However, it was always embedded within the culture of the EP. That's the EP way. We always have to have unity, and we use the resources that we have. So even though I may not necessarily be a chemist, I know one. And if you want your child to be a part of this, or even if you don't, if you want your nation to be, to benefit from this, we've always reached out to those who know more, who have the expertise. And in truth, the believers want to share. They don't mind accepting the call. So we've had multiple different people, and we've done it in different ways. For example, a major part of our curriculum has been life skills, and life skills are all of the things that they don't teach you at school. So our children have had a array of different experiences, from learning stocks and bonds, and learning how to tie a tie, learning how to pick a suit, learning how to iron, learning how to crochet, where the girls had a crochet program, and they won a grant and crocheted scarves and hats for cancer patients. And that was done from another parent. We've had parents to come in, like Sister Malika, who's the national regional student captain on the MGT side. And she would come and she would do different things with them, and learning how to do all of the units. And it's always been that way. So when the students wanted to learn robotics, then we had to go on, all of the parents, who do we know who are engineers? And they would set up sometimes Saturdays, sometimes after school, and help the students to build and program their robots. They would help them to work on their presentations. We would have brothers who were really skilled in that particular way, and they would go out with them, and they would train them, and they would teach them, and they would travel with them from city to city as they would build them up. And it was a sight to see our students, in their suits and bow ties and their garments on, and they would stand in ranks when the other students are running wild. And it's always been that this is not our school. This is not up to Sister Wakiti and Sister Melva at all. It's not even up just to the parents. We have what we call the triangle effect. And that's the students have a serious responsibility to buy into the sacrifices that we're making. And the parents have a serious responsibility. It's not just financial. They have to be present. And the teachers as well. There are multiple clones of us. There are teachers who are better than me. So we all have to work together in order to produce what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's vision was. It's not going to come from one. It can only come from a collective unity. So we always rely on those who know and have an expertise in this particular area to come and help. And what we've found and been successful by the grace of Allah is that they do not mind helping. Our students have had been blessed to have so many experiences. It really is, as the children said earlier, a great blessing. They have went to every other summer before the pandemic. They would spend the month in a different country. You know, they've spent time in Costa Rica, spent time in multiple parts of Mexico. And they would have parents who would come and organize those field trips and who would help them raise the money. Parents who would come and sponsor, all of our professional parents, they would come in and teach a class. Sister Sadia, attorney, Sister Sadia Evangelist, Sister Kiana, as she mentioned, Sister Attorney Pam. They've all come and taught our students about knowing their rights. We've had judges to come. You know, every profession that you have, they've come in and used what they know to share. And so that's what our students have learned. And we expect them to follow the example. We expect them to do the same thing by giving back.
I wanted to pose this to either Brother Hashim or Sister Aya, hearing the involvement of the community. What do you see in that in the way of maybe your own personal responsibility of giving back? And how do you feel when you see members of your community coming in to assist in this manner for your success?
I would just have to say, it just is extremely motivating. I've always believed to whom much is given, much is required. My parents have taught me that since a very young age. The Elevated Places taught me that. When you can see the sacrifices, my mother is very talented. She could be a singer. She can be a different type of businesswoman, but for her to have 4 children and to sacrifice, and for Sister Melva, who has 8 children, to sacrifice in the way that they did, to say that this is bigger than me, you're taught selflessness. And when I see that, I know that I can't be selfish with my time, that even in my self-care, I'm still being selfless because I'm catering to myself so that I can be my best for other people, for my parents. And I think it's extremely important because I'm just always striving to be my highest self. I'm striving to go in places that I know will serve me. I'm striving to, when I get on the college campus, knowing that there will be temptations. When I go to different programs, there's always things that other people want of you. But Elevated Places taught me, why be a devil when God's an option? And I think that's just so important to know that there are people who have sacrificed for you to be here and for your legacy. And I'm so big on legacy and knowing that the things that my mother has done is not in vain, but I will carry this out and know that maybe even the next generation can have something way better than I have now.
Thank you, Sister Aya. Brother Hashim?
I'd actually like to add on to what Sister Aya said. It's an experience to say the least, but it's also, I feel like it's also a responsibility, because when you see the amount of sacrifice that the parents give, that that our teachers like Sister Wakiti, like Sister Melva, they put in the time to teach our students that they can do better, that they can have this, I mean, like mentioned earlier, they teach us more than just, basic education. There's a lot more to it. Life skills, things that we're actually going to be using in our lives, the things that we need to know. I feel like it's more so a responsibility, if anything, to give back, because it goes beyond just us, beyond us individually, because it's a community type environment. So I feel, just for me personally, and I think any student at the Elevated Places who's experienced what I have should have some knowledge or some idea in their head that, maybe I should have the ability to give back, knowing that they've sacrificed so much into this school, in this community that they've grown. So I feel thankful. I feel responsible in a way. It's like it's an anvil on my on my shoulders, so to speak. But it's my concluding thoughts on that.
I'm not sure we lost Sister Donna or not, but I wanted to visit another component of this experience, Sister Wakiti, before we get too close to the end, and that is the moral compass that Minister Farrakhan refers to in the Swan Song, and the intense focus that we place in the Nation of Islam on the development of character.
Yes, ma'am.
Very early in the study course, the student learns that man is created to face difficulty, and the greater the value, the greater the difficulty factor. Whatever we desire, if it's valuable, there will be a difficulty factor attached to it. And the more valuable it is, the greater the difficulty. And I know that with my children and in the study circle, I stress that all the time, that when you face a setback, when you come up against an obstacle, fight the gravitational pull of the victim syndrome. Oh, woe is me. Why is this happening to me? I only want to do good. It's actually Allah's love for you that He decides you're worth Him testing. And so I just wanted you to say a little something about that missing element from the Western educational system, which is morality. And, you know, I noticed that America as a nation is the sum total of her people. And in this country, you know, you're not taught self-examination, self-analysis, self-correction. One of my favorite statements from the minister, he said to us in an executive council meeting one time, he said, never approach a problem as though you are not part of it. And I found that to instantly be of value in my life. So perhaps you could talk on the fact that the elevated places spectrum includes moral character development.
The elevated places not only includes it, that's the premier part. You know, you'll hear that echoed from all of the teachers, and we say it all the time to the children. The most important lesson is the most important thing, period, is the character. That trumps all of the academics, because you're going to always be, you know, tried, and you're always going to have these different things that go on and these different problems. As long as you're living, you're going to have problems. However, the character is always going to take you further than any skill. You're always going to be rewarded, because that's what Allah said. That's what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told us, that Allah looks at the heart. You know, through the heart and through our character is how we become successful. So it doesn't matter what type of grades you have, if you had to lie and cheat to get them. It doesn't matter how much money you have, if you had to lie and cheat and do, you know, evil things to other people in order to get it. The most important thing that we have is character. And I'm so glad that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan came back and talked about that during the Swan Song, in which he mentioned, you can't live without the truth. We cannot live without the truth. And understanding that the truth is the primary principle, that has to be the foremost in everything. And right now, we're actually in a moral decline. You'll see right now, people, you know, we're in Pride Month, and you have so many schools, unfortunately, that has to now be the narrative. They have to constantly talk about it. They have to be inclusive. They have to do all of these different things, because that's the way of the world. However, at the elevated places and at all of the Muhammad University school system, period, our way, we have to intentionally combat that. Every time we see it, we have to root it. We have to knock it off at its head, period. We can't allow indiscretions to come within this. And that has helped me so much because, of course, as individuals, I'm not a perfect person, even though I'm striving to represent a teaching that is perfect.
Right.
And so this has helped me so much because I have to constantly keep working on myself, because I can't preach something to the children without trying to do it. So as I'm teaching them, I'm teaching me. You know, as I'm talking to them about morality, it's helping me to become a better Muslim. And I believe that, you know, going to school with and working along such wonderful Muslims, we sharpen each other. And then throughout that, then the students can see that at every turn. And a huge part of my philosophy that I think is really missing in a lot of schools is, and with parents within the educational system, period, is that they believe that learning just takes place at home or at school. No, learning takes place everywhere.
That's right.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said every place you've been in school. And so everywhere is a learning opportunity for you. And you don't show up as a student just at school. No, you show up as a student everywhere. So you bring your best self in everything you do. So if it's at school, if it's at home, if it's at the mosque, if it's on your job, if it's wherever you are, you always show up with all of these skills that have made you who you are. So the morality has to be premier. The morality has to be the first thing, because that's what's going to help us in this fight that we're in right now. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, in these days, it is our righteousness that will sustain us and nothing else.
Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry I dropped off. We had a little internet issue here. I wanted to know if you could, and time is going by so fast. We actually literally only have like 15 minutes left in the program. And so there was a quick question I wanted to ask the students, but also Sister Wakiti, if you could just kind of give us an overview of what a day looks like at Elevated Places, because it's clear that this school is not, is unlike schools that are out there. And we know what we're used to seeing.
Well, I think
Donna, if I may,
I'm sorry, yes, ma'am.
Real quick before we leave the subject of, because I'd raised the issue of the moral compass, and I loved hearing what Sister Wakiti set forth, that's really the distinction between heaven and hell is righteousness, truth over falsehood. But I just wanted to say this too, that it is time for us to obey. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And Allah, God came here calling us to come out of her, my people. And whatever hinders us from moving toward that goal, that's one of the reasons we're doing this series, one of the reasons we've done the town hall meetings and tried to arouse that what's already in all of our DNA, and that is to return to self. But when Sister Aya mentioned, having to be aware of and know that there is temptation, we owe it to our young people to create a better environment for them where they're not confronted with temptation. And the only way to do that is to move towards separation, because as the minister said, Allah tests us. The devil tempts us. God does not tempt you, okay? He tests you, he tries you. And so when there's an appeal being made to the lower self, we know that's coming from Satan. That's not coming from Allah. And we have the power to reduce the presence of temptation and ultimately to eliminate it altogether. So I just wanted to get that in real quick, Sister Donna, and I know we're out of time. You were about to a day at the Elevated Places. Thank you.
No, ma'am. Thank you for jumping in, because that was critical. And I do want to say this real quick, because this is one of the reasons that we like to also highlight what people are doing. Over on YouTube, as people are watching, we already have a request from a sister. They want to know if you take contributions. I would imagine that you don't turn them down. So
we definitely don't turn them down.
And we'll give the website of Elevated Places at the end, as well as I'm going to put it in the YouTube. But this is a great part of why we do Project Separation, Building Our Promised Land, to highlight, because things are going on. There is a change. There's a mighty change taking place, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, that only even a fool could see. There's a mighty change taking place. And this is critical because as Student Minister David said, the distinction between heaven and hell, we're seeing it. And we have a supreme wisdom lesson, the Muslims, that says, set yourself in heaven at once. And there's a difference between sit and set. So we'll just give that as a homework assignment. You go ahead and go look up the difference between sit and set. So we're talking about setting ourselves in heaven. And so I just wanted, if you could just very briefly kind of give us a view of what it looks like going to the Elevated Places School, because we see the product, and based on what you're producing, it can't be what we're so used to in a typical traditional school environment. And then also, I know we still have a few minutes, but also during the pandemic, when a lot of schools had to go to Zoom and Elevated Places too, but I saw where you expanded your offering and your services and reached out. And so if you could also mention that as well.
Just really quickly on the point of separation, before the pandemic, during the month of November, we would always take a school field trip to visit the Amish, because they would have this yearly celebration around November, and all year they will work to provide and to create and develop different products and different things, and they're completely separated. We would take a lot of the students. It's like a 2-hour drive. And I remember having conversations with some of the children that were on the farm or on their land, and some things they had no clue about. Like, they didn't know what McDonald's was, certain shows. They had no idea. And these were children who were 12 and 13 years old. So I know for sure that the separation is the best and only solution, because as long as we're inundated with all of these different images, our children have constant battles. This is a battle. We're in a war for the minds of our children. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to, we get knocked down and we have to come back and swing, because we cannot allow this devil to win. So that was that. What you all are doing is so timely and so relevant and so important, because we can't lose that part of the teachings, the part that says separation, and not trying to constantly integrate and find ourselves in this world, but do something totally different. So that's what we did for the Elevated Places. We knew that a paradigm shift needed to take place. We read the study guides, but what would that look like? We just experimented and tried something. So we came up with a concept called individualized instruction. Individualized instruction is where the student gets the education that they need for the level that they're on. Not just, I'm 8, and so I'm in 3rd grade, I'm 9, I'm in 4th grade. And we were one of the first people, well, probably the premier for sure, within our community to introduce the concept of on-level learning. We did that years and years ago, and that's what allowed our students to graduate at an earlier age, because we kept trying to figure it out. If the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that they should be getting a PhD at 18, how are they going to do that if the traditional system doesn't finish until 18? So we took away and removed all of the actual grade levels and started to individually test the student and say, what level do they read on? What level do they do math on? What's their comprehension like? And we started with levels. And that's how it kind of works with the Elevated Places. Before the pandemic, what would typically happen is the students come in and we start with prayer. We start with recitations and affirmations and who they are, in clips from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and verses from the Holy Quran. We do that as a start, and of course with drill. And then we would move into our classes on this on-level learning. And it was set up very similar to what colleges look like, because we were talking about Muhammad University. And so what the college level looks like, where they have the block schedule, and Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, they have certain classes, and Tuesdays and Thursdays, they have certain classes. And those particular classes are taught by the teachers or the staff members who are proficient in that particular area. The teacher who is a mathematician, she teaches math. She's not teaching multiple subjects like I had to do when I was, in the public school system. You just teach everything because everything is self-contained. But we took those who had the skill, and that's how they were able to give the best, because that was the level in the area that they were proficient in. And after they would have all of their core classes, then of course, just like you have in the university level, we would introduce electives, and electives could be Spanish. It can be chess. We have an award-winning chess team. We have an award-winning Taekwondo team. We have, as you mentioned before, the robotics, and our students won first place in National Society of Black Engineers. But we've had countless first place winners. We even have one this year in the national, in the NAACP, in their academic Olympics. We've had multiple winners in the science categories mostly. And we would always do that. We've had dance, we would do art, a lot of different types of activities. As I mentioned before, the crocheting, engineering, different types of STEM. And that's what it would look like, to give students ideas and exposure to see what they really did like. What do I want to do, and how do I want to serve, and which ministry do I choose? Because it's all leading up. It's very intentional, all leading up to this one final introduction from elevated places into the world, which is their capstone. You're finding yourself, and you're getting all of these different resources, and you're getting this information, and you're constantly being bombarded with critical thinking opportunities and presentation opportunities to express yourself. And then once you get to the end and conclude, now how do you express this in this one unique way that's authentic to who you are, because you've been working it out all of these years. And so again, the elevated places looks a little bit different from the traditional school, because of the way that the school day is structured and the classes are structured, with that block schedule, if you will, more of a reflective of a university than a traditional public school or even private school.
Thank you so much. This has been, this has been such an enlightening evening. And I hope that those of us that are listening are taking notes. And if we have children, these are the expectations we should have for their school environment. And we should get into that mindset that I have to separate in order to have this type of environment for my children. As Minister Ava made it so clear, we're talking about the distinction between heaven and hell. So where do we want to place our children? Do we want to place them in heaven, or do we want to knowingly place them in hell, in a world that's going out, in a system that is dying? And if I'm not mistaken, Sister Wakiti, don't you now offer distance learning?
Yes, ma'am. When the pandemic hit, I think it was one of our teachers, Brother Abdul Alim Ansari. He actually, formerly Brother Eric Muhammad, who's our resident imam here in Houston, but he's our Islamic sciences instructor, and he just immediately transitioned maybe like the next week. It's all online, and we followed his lead. And with that, we were able to open up, because there was obviously a need for a lot of parents who weren't able to get quality education anymore. So we started our online program, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the city of Houston and all their public schools. And so it was a very seamless transition for us, and we were able to accommodate parents who had been trying to get into the elevated places, but as Minister Ava mentioned, live in different places. And so, yes, we were able to expand our offerings to online learning at specific levels, and it's been very helpful. We have a lot of students from all over now the nation who have been able to join the EP family that we're super honored to help and serve.
Thank you so much. We have come to the close of a phenomenal program. We have about 5 minutes left, a little less. If we could get a minute closing remark from you, Brother Hashim, and a minute closing remark from you, Sister Aya, and then we're going to close in prayer. And before we go, we want to make sure that you visit the Elevated Places School. We've placed the website in the chat, but it is elevatedplaces.org. Also visit projectseparation.com. You can see all of our previous presentations and get information on Project Separation. And of course, visit www.ministerava.com to stay up to date on what is going on, the programs, the master classes, the books, and more. So with that, if we could hear from you, Sister Aya, in 1 minute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to say I'm really extremely grateful for this opportunity. I know this is super important for the youth, especially me and Hashim, to just express how amazing it is to go to a school such as the Elevated Places and to make just morality, as Minister Ava mentioned, seem that it's something that you want to be a part of. You don't want to be deceptive and go towards a world that's ending in your demise. And I think as we talk about the things that we said today, it's just important for just the youth to know that you are blessed to go to your MUIs or the Elevated Places, and that you need to be grateful for what you have and use it as an advantage and a strength, and share your knowledge with the world, because it does make a difference when you can be authentically yourself, because other people are just waiting for somebody that they can follow so that they can be themselves as well.
Thank you, Sister Aya. Brother Hashim?
And they took the words out of my mouth. My closing remarks, I'm grateful for this interview that we had today. It was a great opportunity to talk about the experience of EP and its purpose and aim for the community. And yeah, that's my closing remark right there.
So we thank Student Minister Ava Muhammad. We thank Elevated Places. We thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for being that voice for the voiceless. We thank the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his prized student, and we thank him for recognizing Master Fard Muhammad on his coming, for without any of that, there would be none of this conversation. And so with that, we want to close out as we greeted you in the greeting words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be unto you. And we will have closing prayer by Brother Zuri Muhammad.
Yes, ma'am. Attention prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, and Master of the Day of Judgment. Thee alone do we serve, and thine aid do we beseech for help. O Allah, guide us on the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed thy favors, and not the path of those upon whom thy wrath has been brought down, nor of those who go astray after they have heard thy two teachings. Ameen.
Ameen.
Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.